The Western Korean wave may be called a history of exchange between the West and Korea. The universality that constitutes the Korean wave's popularity, unforeseen even by Koreans themselves, may be seen as the activation of a Korean cultural gene transmitted through the Western Korean wave from antiquity. Park Young-suk once revealed that the etymology of modern modernism derives from the mu of the shaman. Indeed, the Korean wave, now discussed as reaching even a fourth wave, has thus far been said to owe its popularity to a female culture linked to the Samson matrilineal line. The common code of Daejangyeom, Winter Sonata, and BTS is said to be universality and femininity. This femininity has been called Korean culture in contrast to the Western dichotomy designated as black and white logic, and viewed in terms of the three-dimensional five phases, it becomes depth, circulation, and empathy. In fact, Hwang Tae-yeon holds that Western modernity began from the Confucian empathy transmitted by Matteo Ricci. Depth represents threefold differentiation. To examine the process of the Western Korean wave, a more comprehensive analysis of the Dangin origins in Western antiquity and the Middle Ages is required. The Korean wave exists not only today but began in antiquity, and so the Western Korean wave likewise begins from ancient history. According to Woo Chang-soo, a scholar of Dangin thought who has recently drawn attention for his empirical study of ancient history, world history up to the 7th century AD, is identical with the history of the Korean people. Examining matters on the basis of Woo Chang-soo's theory that world history up to the 7th century AD is the same as Korean history, one can clearly understand the Western Korean wave up to the 7th century AD. According to Woo Chang-soo, world history changed greatly with the fall of Baekje in AD 663 as its turning point. In terms of yin-yang and the five phases, 663 is the date of the Forgapja, which recurs once every 1980 years. That is, the nearest Forgapja day among the eras for which history remains in written record, namely the Gyuhae year, Gapja month, Gapja day, and Gapja hour is the winter solstice of 663. The astronomy of this era forms a vertical-horizontal alignment in a single line. This was the last day of the Battle of Baekjeon Fortress, in which final victory was won over the Japan-Baekje allied states. The war between Baekje Japan and the Silla-Tang alliance was a long-cherished undertaking of China spanning some 1,000 years, and may be called the First World War since the Great Battle of Jwalu. The forgetting of the Western Korean wave originates from this time. After the fall of Baekje, there was again war between Tang and Silla, but the refugees of Baekje and Goguryeo cooperated with Silla, and Gyeomsansa was built to mourn them. Taking the year 663 as its turning point, the Tang dynasty finally transferred to China the culture and history of Gojoseon, including the regular script, the origin of Chinese characters. The reason world history after the 7th century AD is not recognized as Korean history is said to be that history at this point was left unexplained. In fact, the Westerner Terence McKenna holds that, applying vectors in the order of the sequence of hexagrams commentary of the Book of Changes, history from the time of King Yao coincides with a vector graph of time. Viewed through this timescale year chart, the thesis of the Korean Peninsula origin of Buddhism that Hong Jong-sup presented at the 2018 Autumn Conference of the New Anthropology Society is highly persuasive. The circulation principle of the cauldron and the steamer also closely matches the law of circulation. Indeed, the lotus and the hum of Om Mani Padme Hum, and the Maitreya of Myruk, are said to represent the sun and the sun's circulation principle. Just as the myth of Troy was proven to be history, Woo Chang-soo says that the history of Dangin today is likewise becoming ever clearer through China's Northeast Project, a Northwest Project. China, which once recognized only the Xia dynasty, today calls itself the descendants of Yan and Huang, descendants of Shenlong, and the Yellow Emperor, and extends its chronology back to Shenlong and the Yellow Emperor. It identifies the state of Emperor Yao with the Taozi civilization, claims that Shenlong and the Yellow Emperor originated from the Zhang people to the west, and seeks to link Dunhuang, which has over 10,000 ancient tombs and is most closely associated with the Sodal, to the Northwest Project. If we examine the Western Korean wave by connecting the three-dimensional five phases with various theories of ancient history, then, roughly in chronological order, It is as follows. According to recent discoveries in archaeology and genetics, the origin of the Western Korean wave may be dated to 70,000 years ago. Unlike the Hwangdangogi, the Sensagi estimates the beginning of history at 70,000 years. It is said that the claim that 7 Hwangdan ruled for 70,000 years is so difficult that the Hwangdangogi sidesteps it. Yet 70,000 years shows the reason Koreans possess the most Neanderthal genes. 70,000 years ago is regarded archaeologically as a year of great crustal upheaval. Archaeology shows why a new humanity was born at that time. The notion that Homo sapiens had superior genes to Neanderthals has today been overturned. That Koreans have the world's highest level of Neanderthal genes shows that today's Korean wave boom has a genetic factor. The further one moves toward East Asia, the more Neanderthal genes there are, and by Google's published estimates in particular, Korea reaches the world's highest level. Humanity began in Africa, and in Rwanda, Africa, there is a language similar to Korean. It is said that tracing it makes it possible to trace all the roots of the Korean language. Wu Changsu holds that, because humankind lived for 60,000 years in a matriarchal society, as in the Mado myth, today's civilization became possible. A characteristic of matriarchal society is said to be that, like bees or ants, it builds a vast civilization reaching units of a million. By contrast, male-dominated apes maintain units of merely 7 or 8. During this period, humans became so cooperative that their genes changed. Their cooperative system developed to the point of exterminating mammoths through actual hunting, and a peaceful civilization persisted to the extent that corpses with skulls ruptured by war have not yet been found. This situation is also well reflected in the Bible. Wu Changsu emphasizes that the content of Arambul in the Bia myth and that of Abraham coincide. Matrilineal society is connected with Taul, the symbol of Eastern thought, and with the go board. The garlic in the Dangan myth is interpreted as Manul, and thereby linked with Taul. Some say that the Mugo song of the Budoji also coincides with the go board. The regarded today as a symbol of Buddhism, though reversed in direction, was the symbol of the Aryans, and the Aryans are connected with the Mado people who came down from Central Asia, that is, from Dunhuang. This Manul appeared as Taul and Huang in China's Han Dynasty, and the three sovereigns, the heavenly sovereign, the earthly sovereign, and the human sovereign as well as Quan, are connected with the three gods of Mado. This shows the form of the law of circulation, according to the three-dimensional 5 phases. This becomes the origin of the twin fish motif, and of the Taebok. In terms of the three-dimensional 5 phases, the three gods of Mado can symbolize the 3 axes of the three-dimensional 5 phases. Heaven, earth, human comes to the fore as the problem-solving principle of yin-yang, and the 5 phases, and it comes to the fore at this time, as the principle of making the conveniences of civilization, and the foundations of the Chinese characters and of Hangul, are also formed. The fact that Genesis of the Bible is contained in Chinese characters, shows that Chinese characters were devised in a certain era. Park Yongsik also links Katalhoyuk, a representative site of this period, with Fixie, and recent findings at the Gobkli Teep site, and other archaeological discoveries decisively prove a 12,000-year antiquity. Together with the 70,000-year thesis, the 12,000-year thesis closely accords with Xiao Kengji's Wen Hongse. Wu Changsu holds that Chinese characters were created in this period, and that Chinese characters, like Hangul, are composed of some 200 morphemes. In this period, Fixie appears in China unlike in the Hwangdangogi as the yellow bear who may be regarded as Huanan, and the yellow emperor leaves descendants who become the ancestors of Koreans, Zhuang Shu Gaoyang, and Xiao Hao Jinshin. Yi Sungyu says that when the heavenly emperor who then ruled 10,000 li, did not pass the throne to Crown Prince Buru, and the emperorship passed to Shun instead of Yao, the land of gentlemen split off, and, as in the Gunsawa, was transmitted through 47 generations. According to Wu Changsu, this period is one in which the Asodal civilization of Gojoseon spread widely, reaching as far as Greece and Rome. The sunken continent known today as Sundaland is said to have allowed free passage across Eurasia. The language of ancient Greece, philosophical terms such as arche and personal names such as Aristotle abounds in linguistic and philosophical elements that flowed in from Gojoseon. Indeed, the earth, water, fire, wind that arose simultaneously in Greece and India resembles yin-yang in the five phases. The connection of Greece and Rome with Indian culture was noted early on, and the Indian culture that formed the background of Greek culture is itself substantially influenced by Aristotle. The Rig Veda and the Upanishads, which became the foundation of Indian culture, are full of the same threefold differentiation principle as the Chenbudgyung. Indeed, it is said that the Indian upper classes such as Tagore, or the director of the Indian Museum whom the Southern theory scholar Dr. Kim Byung-mo met already knew of their connection with the Aristotle culture. Kim Jang-min's Kazakhstan Gojoseon theory, widely known on YouTube, and Park Young-suk's theory, widely known since the 1960s, are theories that support this. Such hypotheses explain that the origins of Plato's theory of ideas, the styles of Greek art, and Sanskrit-derived terms that became the origins of religions worldwide such as Maitreya and Mani-Padme began in Korea. According to Wu Chang-soo, the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences today identifies the Yellow Emperor's surname as Kim. Le Coury, called France's foremost China expert of the 19th century, once held that the Yellow Emperor came from Babylonia. Since then, Japan has maintained the Babylonian origin thesis of Chinese civilization as its mainstream view up to the present. Kim becomes the Jurchen, and in Western languages, Asin, which connects to the numerous Western words meaning iron, and even to the Qing dynasties, Asin Joro, and, as is well known, Koreans have the most people surnamed Kim, said to approach nearly 50% when derived Kim lineages are included. Dangun appears as a teaching presence in many regions of that time, and across numerous civilizations, and the history of this age becomes the origin of today's Western Korean wave. The resemblance between the portrait of Dangun said to have been drawn by Sulchong, and the figure of Sargon plainly shows the East-West exchange of ancient history. Searching Google for Kara, the same root as Gaya, turns up results in numerous regions, and Sargon is said to be pronounced the same as Dangun. Lee Sung-gyu holds that Dangun was Chungun, a kind of regional feudal lord concept of the time. Combining the two theories, a Sargon as a feudal lord of the land of the gentlemen, which was a world empire, is also possible. The recent discovery that the African language Kinyarwanda is the same as Korean also holds that civilization was transferred to the Korean peninsula, owing to a flood in this period. As mentioned in the field of economic thought, from this point on the three-dimensional five phases of threefold differentiation is interpreted as planar and solid. As in the Babylon legend of the Bible, at this time the world splits into the three-dimensional five phases, and the planar five phases, and the mainstream culture shifts from a matrilineal society to a patrilineal one. It becomes the period of entry from an age of peace into an age of war. Noteworthy are the numerous wounds on the Yingshu skeletal remains discovered as artifacts of the Yuan dynasty. Wu Chang-soo holds that the numerous wound marks on the Yingshu remains are traces of the Yingshu sites being annihilated, and that the cause of the annihilation was its attempt to read heaven's divination in place of Gojoseon. Until before 663, China continually sought to take over the status of the land of gentlemen. The reason yin-yang and the five phases came to prominence in the Han dynasty is a difficult problem not yet precisely solved. In the Huangdan Gogi, the lineage of yin-yang and the five phases appears from the time of King Yao, but in Chinese records it begins in the spring and autumn and warring states period, and is established under Dongzhang Shu of the Han. Just as Chinese writing is called Han characters, and China is written with the character Han, the occasion by which China came to represent Gojoseon culture today began in this period, and was completed under the Tang dynasty. The Taoism that became popular in the Han, together with yin-yang, and the five phases, was imported from Goguryeo and Buya. Taoism was re-imported into Goguryeo, and Dongjin holds that the Taoist thunder deity Guchen Ingwen Nosen, appearing in the Akshubo-gyeng, also originates from the myths of Goguryeo and Buya. What Zhang Liang, the strategist of Emperor Gaozu of Han, and Liu Bei of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms have in common, is that both were straw sandal sellers. The straw sandal is said to be the code of the operative forces that Goguryeo, successor to the Land of Gentlemen, sent into China. The Sui and Tang dynasties mobilized vast resources to attack Goguryeo, and this is said to have been a struggle to seize that initiative and legitimacy. Wu Changse holds that what emerged after Beqi fell, and even handed over its writing system to China, was Silla Zadu. After the Tang dynasty, Korea could not write its own history, and came to record it only indirectly. It is said that 8 is a number symbolizing Gojoseon. The reason Chinese people so love 8 is said to be not so much that 8 symbolizes wealth, as that 8 is the number of Gojoseon. It is said that the Goryeo and Joseon dynasties deliberately divided the country into 8, because of the spirit of succeeding Gojoseon. Indeed, it is said that the first thing King Gojong did upon achieving independence after the Sino-Japanese War was to erect the many octagonal pavilions that remain today. The Gojoseon civilization that crossed into China, passing through the Song, Yuan, and Ming, ultimately had its development delayed, and is said to have crossed over again to the west through the translation enterprise of the Jesuit priest, Matteo Ricci, who had come to the west. Through Matteo Ricci's translation, Leibniz interpreted the Book of Changes scientifically as binary notation, and, through the Chinese model in which a moral society is possible without Christianity, created a new modern civilization. The West called this new modern civilization modernism, using the root mu meaning shamanism. The core concept that the modern West adopted from China for realizing a moral society without Christianity was sympathy. What the modern West took most notice of in Chinese morality was Mencius's theory of the child about to fall into a well. The reason the theory of the child falling into a well was so important to Westerners in Mencius was that it showed the ground of morality could be replaced by human sympathy. Mencius argued that when a person sees a child about to fall into a well and tries to save it, this is not due to rational calculation or an attitude of putting oneself in another's place, but due to the sympathizing nature innate in human beings, thereby providing a theoretical grounding for Confucius's idea of benevolence. The West interpreted Mencius's benevolence as sympathy, and this was brought to fruition by Hume and connected to Adam Smith's economic thought. Adam Smith, connecting Hume's theory of empathy with Laozi's will way and naturalness, established the laissez-faire economic theory that is the foundation of today's capitalism. This was also completed politically when, at the end of the 19th century, Britain politically emulated China's civil service examination system. Contrary to what was taught in school under Japanese colonial influence, it was not that the West enlightened a benighted East, but that from antiquity the West was influenced by the civilization of Gojoseon. In postmodernism and posthumanism, the Dangan thought of the Chenboging is especially highlighted. In the West, which is enthusiastic about today's Korean wave, there was a historical background. Research on Gojoseon's influence has recently extended, even to Africa and America. This also well explains the background of the Korean wave rising on the African and American continents.